Hey everyone, JC here. So today I want to talk about uncertainty. Uncertainty, the great unknown, the future. What drops in for you around this theme? There is certainly a collective buzz on this sensibility right now, which is understandable. And I also kind of want to question that. So I'm making this video to share a couple different angles on this topic. And of course, some tools you can try out to support you to cultivate a generative, expansive, maybe even playful relationship with uncertainty, future, the great unknown. So first I'm going to share a perspective, perhaps a reframe around worry, what it is and the ways that it actually helps us. And then we'll talk about the relationship between presence and fears about the future. And I'll share a process that I do, and you can try it out and see if it helps you. Okay, so before we dive into working with worry, I just want to touch on this word uncertainty. And you may have already thought of this or recognize it, but the future always has been uncertain. We may have some wisdom, some insight, an intuition, or information from experience that gives us a clue about the future, but a future time is simply by its nature uncertain because it isn't now, which is certain because it's here and it's happening. So there might be some freedom in that idea. Given that, it can still feel extremely alarming when so many things that were once counted on and that felt certain are up in the air. And one mechanism that often comes online in a time like that is worry. So maybe asking questions with concern, like, what's going to happen? Will we be okay? So, what exactly is worry itself? Here's how I look at it. Worry is a little bit of fear energy making its way up into the mind and projecting fearful thoughts into the future. That might not sound like something that you want, but before we go into how we might change our experience of it, I want to make a case for its usefulness first. Because a principle that I hold in my practice is that every part of me is trying to help. It might be ineffective, maybe outdated based on old information, maybe misplaced, but it's trying to help. So let me give you an example of where this worry pattern is actually really useful and isn't always stressful. Driving. This worry mechanism is a big part of what makes me a safe driver. When I'm driving, I'm usually pretty relaxed, listening to my tunes, maybe talking to a friend. I'm also constantly changing where I'm looking, front, side, back, and always moving my eyes. And one of the ways that I think when I'm driving is how to give myself an out, a safe place to move if someone in front of me or next to me does something unexpected. So there's a tiny bit of fear energy, not a lot, but enough to keep me quite alert and aware of what's around me. And some of that makes its way up into my mind and projects all of these scenarios. That person walking over there might suddenly dart out, or the car next to me might try to change lanes without a signal, so that I can make these small, really fast decisions and look for openings in case any of these things happen. And it's a big part of why my driving is generally very smooth, because I look ahead at all the scenarios I can anticipate. And because driving is very fast, things happen quickly. We could be going 65 miles an hour, or I could be honest, faster than that. The pace of that type of thinking actually matches my driving pace. My body is moving through space that quickly, and I need to act that quickly, so it all flows and coordinates together really well. So, for me, other than the seated aspect, generally, I experience driving as a pretty relaxing activity. So, in this case, the worry mechanism is protective in a really helpful way. And the pace of what I'm worrying about or projecting danger based scenarios on is the same pace as making decisions and acting. So you can see where I'm going with this. So worry as a mechanism becomes a lot less helpful when the pace of worried thoughts is highly contrasted with the pace of decisions and actions. So imagine when you're just sitting in one place and your mind is racing with worried thoughts. Sense that contrast. Your body is still and your mind is running ahead. That can be a really uncomfortable place to be. And I think it's quite common when the mind is running ahead to try to speed up decisions and actions in an unconscious effort to bring thought and all the other aspects of our being more into coordination. But often this leads to rushing decisions or actions that need more time and spaciousness to be aligned with what we want. So I want to share two approaches here to bring the pace of thought and action more in alignment, so you're not in that place of discrepancy if you don't want to be there. So approach one is future yourself. Bring the rest of yourself into the future faster. So what do I mean by that? So if your thoughts are moving ahead, match that with your body. You can speed up your body by using movement, especially moving through space in the sagittal plane, that's forward and back, going forwards if possible, like walking, running, biking, roller skating, blading. Inside that moment, I would recommend doing something that you're familiar with and comfortable with, not necessarily trying something new right then. Even being a passenger in a car and actually paying attention to how fast you're physically moving through space, everything going by quickly. So to your whole system moving forward is an experience of traversing through time. So matching your body with that forward mental pace can help bring your whole system into more congruence and coherence. So that's one approach to a worry mechanism that's more active than how you'd like it to be, future yourself. The other approach is going the other direction, presence yourself, bringing your mind back to the present. So how do we do that? Well, there are so many great resources and practices out there around cultivating presence. So what I want to offer here is maybe a little bit of a different angle, which is the recognition of presence as the backdrop, the default, not something that we need to add or to get to, but that which is always already here. And so instead of asking, how can I be present, we're going to flip that and look at what's taking me away from experiencing presence. What am I resisting in the present, or what am I resisting about my experience of being? And my personal experience, and I've seen this in common with other folks too, is that what takes me away from presence is usually resisting a thought, emotion, or sensation that I haven't carved out space for. So in the case of worry, it's often all three. The emotion of fear, the sensations of frenetic energy that go along with that, and a particular thought I'm believing that feels unbearable to hold. My approach on myself is that I work with thoughts last, I find it much more doable to open up my perspective, question beliefs when I feel more comfortable in my own body. But it's different for everyone, and it's dynamic, it changes. So you'll find what works best for you. So let me break down the first 3 parts of my process for bringing my mind back to the present, so you can test this out for yourself. Okay, so first, there's a moment when I notice myself worrying or projecting some kind of fear-based future scenario. And I might think, oh, I'm worrying. That moment is special. So the first thing you can do in that moment is celebrate. Seriously, why? So the part of you that notices the worrying isn't caught inside of it. The part that sees it isn't in it. And that means it's already free of it. One of my teachers, Alyssa, really drove this point home, and it's such a helpful thing to notice. So, part 1 is celebrate. Okay, I'm worrying and I'm celebrating. Now, what do I do? Okay, so second thing is get specific. So you can ask yourself, what thought, emotion, or sensation am I having that I'm holding myself from experiencing more fully? So part 2 is get specific by identifying one thought, one emotion, or one sensation that's present. An example of each would be the sensation of sharp jolts in my leg, or I could identify the emotion is fear, or I could pick out the thought, it would be bad if X happened. Just to briefly clarify each, so sense perception is the data that comes through our sensory nerves. Examples of that would be warmth and coolness, tension, relaxation, feeling of movement like vibration, pulsation, or wave, fullness or hollowness, emptiness, heaviness, lightness. Emotions are moving energies that possess a specific tone, orientation, and a message. I might break that down in a different video at some point. Examples of emotions would be anger, sadness, fear, disgust, shame, joy, and bonding or connectedness. Thoughts are mental abstractions. Examples of thought would be beliefs, opinions, ideas, judgments, self-talk, identifications. When you want to identify thought, you'd break it down into a single sentence, like one, just one. And often, just breaking your experience down from an abstract tangle of sensory, emotional, mental content into a highly specific piece, one piece that you can look at, makes it feel much more manageable and less overwhelming. And I don't necessarily identify all of them at once. I just pick one that I can identify and hold most easily. For me personally, I usually go sensation first, then emotion, then thought. It just depends on what what comes most easily for you and what you can hold. All right, so part 3, and this is where we'll leave off. Part 3 is saying thank you. So, often when a distressing sensation, emotion, or thought comes up, it's pretty vulnerable for that part to speak up. It's kind of like the person in the group who says, hey, I'm not really comfortable with where this is going. That takes a lot of courage. So when we identify that distressed sensation, emotion, or thought, saying and meaning, thank you for telling me that, I want to hear more. That can make all the difference, and that opens the door for deep listening. And I think listening is a foundation for healing. So celebrate, get specific, say thank you. Okay. So to recap, when you find yourself worrying and feeling distressed, you can future yourself or presence yourself. Future yourself by moving your body forward through space. Presence yourself, starting with 3 parts. First, celebrate, noticing the worry. Then, get specific by naming one sensation, emotion, or thought that's present. And last, say, thank you, I want to hear more, and see what unfolds from there. So, my challenge to you, of course, is to choose one of these 2 approaches and commit to trying it out in the next 24 hours. And I would really love to hear how it goes.